Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Season 12 of the Dark Money Files, in which we shine a light into a murky world. I'm Ray Blake, and with me is my co-host, friend and business partner Graham Barrow. Hello Graham.
Hi Ray, so what have we got today then?
A couple of recent European enforcement actions, Graham, which are a good indicator of how the nature of regulatory enforcement is changing.
Well, that sounds good, but let's first mention, Ray, Risk Alert 247, which continues to support this podcast.
Yes, let's. As we speak, we're about 3 weeks into the new regime at Companies House, where mandatory officer verification is now in place. And I think it's fair to say this hasn't removed all the risks.
Well, no, indeed, Ray, and that's probably worth a podcast episode in its own right in the new year, once there's a bit more data.
But in the meantime, I know Risk Alert 247 continues to point up those continuing risks on a daily basis, and lets firms take a far more holistic and comprehensive view of the risks of every UK corporate entity than you can get by simply verifying the UBO and getting the incorporation certificate.
Yes, and we remain available, both of us, to any listener who would like a live demonstration. Just drop us a note and we will make it happen.
And on that note, Graham, do we want to talk about the public demonstration we're planning?
Well, I think we do. This is going to be more like a webinar where we'll show Risk Alert in action and illustrate some of the hidden risks it can uncover at scale. We'll let people know through LinkedIn, through both of our profiles, when and how to join us for that.
Sounds good.
So, back to these enforcement actions, Ray. I don't know about you, but reading about more fines is starting to leave me a little bit cold because I don't always tend to learn much. The failings tend to be obvious and basic.
I'd agree with you, Graham, but every now and then you get one that gives an insight into how regulators are approaching some aspects of their brief that's worth knowing about, because it moves the needle on what's expected right across the market.
Yes, and you usually have to dig down well below the headline to find those gems, don't you?
You do. I do. One does.
Oh, are you practising your conjugational rights there, Ray?
They can't touch you for it, Graham. But look, these notices all need reading. Regulators make it clear that they expect their firms to have read all relevant enforcement notices relating to other firms and taken action as necessary where they see the findings as potentially applying to themselves.
But the exercise of reading those notices is not always rewarding, is it?
No. So, when two really useful ones come out in the same week, I reckon it justifies an episode to make sure they don't slip through anyone's attention net.
Good call, Ray. So, which two are we looking at then?
Well, there's the Central Bank of Ireland's enforcement against Coinbase Europe and BaFin's against JP Morgan SE.
JP Morgan SE, Ray. What's the SE?
I'm going to mangle this pronunciation, but Societas Europaea, Graham.
Ooh.
It's a European public company designation. The German entity JP Morgan AG converted itself into an SE a few years ago.
Sounds kind of Latin to me. All right, well...
Not the way I pronounced it.
Well, I thought it was a good attempt.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're too kind.
Damned by faint praise. Well... OK, fair enough. Shall we start with Coinbase?
Let's. The CBI stated that Coinbase culpably breached its AML CFT obligations primarily through systemic failures in its transaction monitoring system configuration between 2021 and 2025. This failure meant that billions of euros worth of transactions were not monitored, and the subsequent remediation took an unacceptably long period of 3 years.
OK, we're talking then about the operational risk of configuration. This was a configuration error, a technical slip that rendered the entire monitoring capability ineffective for a huge volume of transactions. The risk isn't itself the error, but the lack of governance around it.
It looks like an IT error, but the implications and outcomes mean it's much more than that. And here is where the CBI action provides a steer. System configuration and model validation are now expected to be treated as critical high-level AML risks, not mere IT issues. The AML team or the compliance monitoring function need to own this.
And the regulator's stance is that operating in the crypto sector means the CBI demands an intrinsically higher immediate standard of vigilance.
Indeed. Now, the size of the fine reflected the perceived high risk of the product itself, regardless of the quality of the individual customers being onboarded.
Yeah, and that fine, which is upwards of €21 million, seems very high nonetheless, Ray.
Well, it does. And the CBI explains that it owes a lot to the remediation lag. It took Coinbase 3 years to correct the fault and file the necessary suspicious transaction reports.
Oh, so there were STRs then?
Yeah. Once they actually reviewed the missed transactions, Coinbase found lots of reportable issues, which the CBI pointed out were suggestive of a large volume of pretty serious criminal activity.
Oops. But reporting them only up to 3 years after they might and should have been detected means that criminal activity that could have been addressed and hopefully stopped was allowed to continue and potentially escalate to claim more victims and cause more human and economic damage.
Well, Graham, when you put it like that...
Well, I do. And more to the point, when a regulator puts it like that, Ray, senior management across the sector need to listen.
Yeah.
For senior leaders, the resources to immediately address and clear AML backlogs must be available. Regulatory patience for long remediation programs is easily exhausted.
And I guess this focus on ongoing controls is a shift as well, when so often we see, particularly in the crypto sector, a focus on weak or absent onboarding controls.
Well, you're right, Ray, and to an extent it's good that we seem to be moving beyond that.
But as we've pointed out many, many times, Graham, many times, world-class onboarding alone rarely catches the bad guys.
Many times. And quite so. But it enables the transaction monitoring and other ongoing scrutiny to work effectively so that we can quickly and reliably spot when something looks wrong for a particular account or client and look at what might be going on more closely.
Or, as we often put it in our training, we can't just guard the gates.
Quite. So, to summarise, Coinbase Europe had a misconfigured TM, transaction monitoring system, that meant some of their transactions were not subject to monitoring over an extended period from 2021.
Upwards of 30 million transactions over a 12-month period with a total value of €176 billion.
Thank you, Ray. That's about a third of all their transactions over the period. Not much. It then took them 3 years to go back and completely review all their transactions. And when they did, they had to retrospectively file some suspicious transaction reports.
2,708 of them, Graham.
Yeah, some. It just depends on the context, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So thanks again. And those STRs related to suspicions of serious criminal activities, including money laundering, fraud, scams, drug trafficking, cyber attacks, malware, ransomware, and child sexual exploitation.
Yep, I think that summarises things nicely.
And the size of the fine means the CBI wants to underline the seriousness of this.
Yeah, here's a direct quote from the notice, Graham. The monitoring of transactions in real time and the filing of STRs without delay is a cornerstone of the effectiveness and efficiency of the AML-CFT regulatory regime. Failure to do so can seriously hinder how the regulatory and criminal justice system can detect, report, disrupt, investigate and prosecute criminality.
Just a minute there, Ray. Did you really say the monitoring of transactions in real time?
Not my words, Graham, those of the CBI.
Oh, but we know that's not what most firms do, don't we? I mean, most transaction monitoring is post-transaction.
Yes, it is, but there's a signal here that the aim should be for real time, that where this is possible, that's what you should implement.
And where it isn't?
Well, I'd suggest then you have a clear and recorded rationale for why not as part of your business-wide risk assessment, along with any compensating controls that you have in place.
So there's one other statement from the CBI at the end of the notice that I think all firms should take note of too. And it says, quote, where system failures do occur, it is imperative that they are reported to the central bank, insert your own regulator's name there, without delay, so that appropriate actions can be taken to manage and mitigate the risk.
Yeah, tell your regulator straight away when you find a problem like this. Continue to share plans and actions as they emerge, but don't be tempted to wait to tell them until you fixed it.
Okay, so that's Coinbase. So next it's JP Morgan, an illustrious name from the past and present. Over in what the young people, I believe, call TradFi. BaFin, the German regulator, broke records with this penalty, didn't they?
45 million euros, Graham. It's their largest penalty by some measure.
And is this one also about transaction monitoring?
Only tangentially, Graham. This one is purely about STR filing.
So they didn't file reports they should have?
Oh, they did file them, Graham. There was no finding around failure to report. They filed everything they should have.
Okay, so what's the problem?
Not doing it quickly enough, Graham.
Wow. I mean, Ray, BaFin tends not to be too expansive in its enforcement notices, and that's probably an understatement. So there's a lot we don't know here, isn't there?
Well, yeah, there is, Graham, but what they do say makes the problem fairly clear.
Yes, so BaFin claims that JPM SE, quotes, culpably breached its supervisory obligations regarding internal processes for the submission of suspicious transaction reports.
And it continues. As a result of these procedural shortcomings in the period from 4 October 2021 to 30 September 2022, JP Morgan SE systemically failed to submit suspicious transaction reports without undue delay.
Now, there are two words in that on their own indicate a large penalty.
Yes, culpably means this failure was not accidental, but arose from negligence or willful inadequacy in design. And systemically means it wasn't a one-off, nor even a few one-offs, but a pervasive structural failure.
And perhaps more importantly, when a breach is found to be systemic, BaFin's penalty can be calculated based on the institution's total revenue.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Now, without undue delay is one of those phrases that's difficult to define, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think you know it when you see it, or rather when you don't.
And BaFin clearly think they weren't seeing it here.
So, Ray, what seems to unite these two cases, actions announced in the same week in November in two different jurisdictions to two very different regulators, or by two very different regulators, is a deficit of urgency on the part of the regulated firms.
Yep, Coinbase found they had an issue and spent far too long fixing it. JP Morgan had an internal process for STR review and filing that left far too long between identifying a suspicion and reporting it. Coinbase's issue was technical, JP's was procedural, but both had real-world outcomes.
Yes, so both regulators seem to be emphasising the knock-on effects in enabling financial crime through delay.
And it's refreshing, isn't it, to see enforcements that aren't about really basic failings, where there's a little bit of nuance and where we get decent insight into the attitudes and priorities of regulators.
It certainly is, Ray.
So, what are we doing next, Graham?
Well, Ray, I think we promised this a couple of times, but I think it's about time we did it. So we were involved in quite a long-form investigation with the BBC into high street crime, which on its own was fascinating and very interesting, which has actually become even more interesting because it has, or at least appears to have influenced a small part of the budget we had in the UK very recently, which clearly signals a focus on some of the problems. So I think we should talk about what happened.
And not to mention the recent arrests by the police in relation to the story as well.
I actually know who's been arrested, but unfortunately that is sub judice, so I can't tell you, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, indeed. So we thought listeners might enjoy hearing the inside scoop on this and how Risk Alert 247 helped us to trace the criminal network behind much of it.
Yeah, nothing like a bit of true crime, is there?
I'm looking forward to it.